So this is the combined everything from all the funds, and you can see quite clearly that she's done with Palantir. It's gone. So the relationship is over. Palantir has moved into their own apartment. Kathy is on Tinder. It's over, bro. They may have
Posting
sex.
thirst trap pictures
They
on
still might have
Instagram.
sex every once in a while, but the relationship is over. I mean, that's it, bro. It's gone. What do you make of this, Amit? Since you're the guest, we want to give you the stage. Just had a leg cramp of this joke, so I want to give you the stage. What do you make of this cacophony of craziness?
No, I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I genuinely am starting to think she knows something that we don't know, because if you take away Palantir's SPAC revenue, so they grew at 34%. If you take away the SPAC revenue from the last quarter, they would be growing at 26%. That is bad compared to the guidance they issued of 30%, but 26 to 30 is not the most craziest thing in the world. So either she genuinely feels that if you take away the SPAC stuff, they're not going to be growing at the compounded annual growth rate of 30% that management is guiding for, which is like, okay, I can see that as a reason to sell because you're a high growth innovation fund. And if the company's not growing at the level you want it to because of the SPAC situation, then okay. But I just don't think all the SPACs are going to go to crap. I mean, these are really decent SPACs. Like these SPACs are not bad. Wejo's a great SPAC. Sarcos Robotics is good. Aftheorent is good. Cellularity is good. I mean, some of them, obviously not all 14 of them are going to be amazing, but not all of them are going to drive us out of business. Even the Tritium, the SPAC that is making electric vehicle charging stations, was on the stage with President Joe Biden 2 weeks ago. And it's opening up a new plant in Nashville. So it's like, I don't think it's a SPAC theory. So then we get to governments. It's like, what's going on with governments? Well, they grew government revenue 47% year over year, but the number of clients stayed the same from 90 in Q4 2020 to 90 in Q4 2021. So it's like they're not growing the number of clients, but there's a lot of reasons for this. I just interviewed Sebastian, who's a great investment banker, and he dived deep into it. The federal budget bill hasn't passed. It was supposed to pass in October, going to get delayed likely until March. That's an $800 billion bill. Palantir can't get paid unless the government budget bill passes. So they're not going to be getting, so Q1 earnings are probably not going to be that amazing from the government side as well. And then on top of that, the government TAM is $56 billion. Palantir has only gotten around 1.6% of that. And that TAM is going to keep growing as well. So it's like, is she either worried that the SPACs are going to go to crap, which means 30% growth rate is not going to happen, because if you take away the SPACs right now, it's under 30%, or she feels that the governmental revenue is simply not strong enough and they're not going to be able to increase the number of clientele they get from the governments, because the commercial business is on fire. So it's like, I don't know what else she's worried about, which leads me to think, does she know something about the fundamentals of the company that we don't know, that her ARC team that she pays hundreds of millions of dollars to research overlooked when they were buying it at $27? I'm not sure what's going on right now. It's very confusing.
Wait, so remind me how big the SPAC position is for Palantir?
About $226 million they invested in total. And most of the SPACs they invested around that. They bought it like $8. They ran up to 11 at the hype, and now they're down at like $2-3.
I just don't understand why they did that. That's like so dumb.
Elaborate, please. Because this is a good representation, and I talked about this earlier on the private conversation of Wall Street does not like when companies start to become quasi holding companies with their cash.
Look,
you guys don't
I
like
love holding companies for people that are capital allocators. So that's
no. Hold on, Justin. Peter Thiel is one of the greatest capital allocators of all time.
I agree, but Palantir,
like those two guys. Go ahead.
No, he means it's an operational company. They should not be investing like that. That's what he means.
Yeah. Peter Thiel is also not like spending his 9 to 6 in Denver, right? He's in Miami. I mean, not that like where you sit is like indicative of what you're doing, but like he's not spending all of his time. I mean, he's like a billionaire. He's not spending all of his time allocating capital for Palantir in the same way Warren Buffett and all of his lieutenants and Charlie Munger are allocating capital for Berkshire Hathaway, right? Or any of these capital allocation companies. So in today's world, like you have a golden opportunity with Palantir to grow an operational business. And then like, so 261 million, you said, right?
Yep.
Dollars that could have gotten pumped in to hiring more more people, more salespeople. Maybe, I mean, 261 million. That could make, you could create a, you could replicate what Asana has built, or what Atlassian has built with like Trello or whatever, and then layer that on top of Palantir and go build this B2C thing that Tom's been wet dreaming about for a long
Yeah,
time.
that's
Right?
true.
Like that's what I'm saying. Versus spending it on, you're spending your time and energy and like a lot of legal dollars being a SPAC investor in a bunch of different SPACs of a bunch of different companies that you could never like. You think Alex Karp knows goes to every single one of their board meetings? Probably not.
I think there's a couple of reasons this is important to understand. Number one, all of the SPACs are data-driven companies. Now, I know that sounds sort of esoteric, but if the company is rooted in data-driven operations and they're finding the cream of the crop in their respective industries that are using data, that's really important. So like Cellularity, for example, it's a company that uses placenta-based stem cells to solve degenerative diseases. I mean, and they're using Palantir's Foundry software to completely operationalize how to discover these drugs and find this stuff. Those are things I think Peter Thiel, Joe Lonsdale, Karp, they want to be at the forefront of those industries. The macro is not being nice to these SPACs right now because all SPACs are getting destroyed. But I think these are strategic investments from that perspective if you're going to put yourself in front of these data-driven industries. Number two, they need to acquire more clients. I mean, like, they didn't have a sales force back in 2020 when they DPO'd. So, like, what was the best way to get clients? Well, let's put some equity into these companies, convince them to use our product. Let's give it to them at a cheap discount. But we keep them as long-term clients, especially if these companies explode. Out of 14, let's say 6 of them make it really big. Those companies are probably worth $30-40 million a year in terms of using our software for the next 10 years. To me, it's a very long-term plan. And then number 3, introduce products with these customers. They introduced literally 3 new products with Wejo over the past couple months. And Wejo, people are saying, is like a competitor with Tesla in terms of the connected vehicle data market. So it's like, I think they made yes, they're not at every board meeting, but I think they made very strategic decisions of, all right, we have $200 million. Could we put that into a sales force? Sure. But could we acquire customers and then be at the forefront of these data-driven industries in the next 5 years by spending the $200 million by capital allocating? It's risky, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad strategy.
I think what he means in simple terms is that they invested in strategic investments. They haven't invested in companies as a capital investment, but they're basically doing JVs.
It's not a VC firm that's hoping to throw it at 100 and one of them becomes the next Facebook. It's not Google Ventures. Right?
No, but
so
I mean the platform is
but SPACs inherently, like, this is the thing. Like, I was on Wall Street investing in SPACs. Like, we were swooping in because SPACs would fall apart. SPAC deals are usually not as good as venture deals because SPAC deals, like, the way it's structured is it's a blank check company and the sponsor is incentivized. Like, they put up $1 million of their own dollars. Like, if I put up $1 million, did a SPAC, like, I would want to do a deal at any cost, because if I don't, I lose my $1 million. And if I do, even if I overpay,
I think it depends. I think it depends on the SPAC. Like, I've researched all 14 of these SPACs. They're really good companies.
No, but he means structurally.
I think, but are they as good as 14 private deals?
Wait, hold on a second. There's a problem with SPACs inherently. You guys can both agree on. Sorry to be the moderator here, but think about it this way. Every SPAC has an inherent flaw, which is once the lockup expires, there's a high incentive for people who have nothing to do with this investment emotionally. It's not like an IPO. They didn't subscribe to this. So once the 6 months, whatever, expires, if the price is up, they're going to be out the door, pushing the price downwards. There's no loyalty there. There's no emotional connection. They didn't fall in love with it during the roadshow.
That is true. I'm not going to deny that. I just think I've done research. I mean, Justin, you have a really good point, right? Like, from the outside looking in, if you're not a shareholder, you're like, why the hell did this company put $200 million into these 14 very risky deals? I'm not going to deny that. Now, if you're deep into it like me and you've actually researched all of them, you're like, well, I think these are good deals. But in the short term, Wall Street's not going to reward that. You're 1000% correct on that, especially if you take away the SPAC revenue. Their growth is below what they projected for. So, I mean, we're going to have to see how it plays out.
Why would you want to take the SPAC revenue out? They've used the platform. It's not like they just paid for it for nothing.
I think it's because of the stigma you're talking about SPACs. It's like people,
how? SPACs are buying the investments. It's strategic investments. They're using the platform. They're paying a fee.
Yes,
mean-
but if they added 34 net new customers last quarter and you take out the revenue from the SPACs and they're below, that means they didn't add enough net new customers to get to 30%. I think that's the argument. And that's where people are like, well, they're growing in a sort of cheaty way. I don't mean cheaty in a negative sense, but
They're buying influence from customers that they think could be very large and innovative in their own fields.
The problem is until they modularize this damn product, they're not going to be growing at the 40, 50% inflection rate that we need. And it's like, we don't know when that's going to happen. I trust it will happen this year, but we don't know.